When people ask me, do I recommend keto in teenage athletes? The answer is, in my house, yes. And it's a threefold reason. Let's first start with the energy sustainability of a keto adapted athlete. Take a look at that match. These kids weigh the same and they showed up to that match fueled by glucose, both of them. Yes, the default or easy fuel to use is glucose. The difference shows up after the first round. 2 minutes of intense wrestling and these teenage boys are tired. They enter the second round and one boy continues to grow energy while the second one starts to wear out. What's happening during that? Take a look at these slides. As the boys begin to wrestle, all of their muscle cells are using glucose for energy. The glucose enters into the mitochondria, and as energy flows down that electron chain transport, out comes abundant energy, and they are wrestling their tails off. By the end of that first match, they're wore out, and their muscle cells are hungry for higher oxygen than their bodies could deliver. In this lower oxygen state, the athlete that cannot use a ketone only has the option for these tiny little side chains to produce energy, while the keto adapted athlete can now switch fuel to ketones or fat. Why is that important? Because even in a lower oxygen state, the ketone fueled mitochondria will produce more energy, and you can see it in that match. As the athletes close out the second round, they are both tired. If you didn't see the difference in their energy by the end of the second round, you will certainly see it in the third round. The second reason that I recommend keto for young athletes is their brain power. In that second and third round, when the oxygen was low and those muscles were growing tired, guess what else was struggling for fuel? You guessed it, their brain cells. Every sport is dependent on how well your brain performs in the moment. They have to have a strategic brain to win in today's sports world. And if your brain is low on oxygen during that match, you're not going to think as well. So as a glucose-fueled brain starts to run on lower glucose, not only is their muscle energy lower, but their cognition is lower. And their attitude gets a little crabby. And teenagers don't need any help with that. The other important part in my house about a brain fueled by ketones is I know that this is the season that my son's hippocampus is growing the fastest. I treat broken brains for a living, and I do everything in my power to give my kids the best development of their brain during teenage years. There are plenty of ways to swell a brain and stop the growth of that hippocampus, and wrestling is no exemption. But the best antidote for any brain injury, as well as the fastest development of their brain, is a state of ketosis. Our kids were not meant to have processed foods and problems with obesity and diabetes issues at the age of 15. They were naturally meant to spend about 60 to 70% of their time in a state of ketosis. The reason my son can recruit ketones on his side in the middle of that match isn't because of what he ate that day. It's what his brain has been practicing using the rest of the year. We covered energy and we covered the brain. Now let's talk about cutting weight. Wrestlers all have the same weight and have to weigh in the morning of the match. So they watch their weight better than 40-year-old women. As you look at that weight control, when they cut weight, there isn't an athlete out there that wants to sacrifice a muscle cell. They want to cut water weight and fat. So how can you guarantee that? The best answer is to cut weight in a state of ketosis. When you drop the calories to a very low calorie in a glucose-fueled body, you will sacrifice the breakdown of muscle cells. You can find the waste products from those muscle cells in the urine. And when the athletes were in a state of ketosis and cut weight, they found much less muscle breakdown. What did they lose? They lost water weight and fat. So why does that athlete in a keto-adapted state not break down muscle? The answer is that, yes, a ketone is a fuel, but it's also a signaling agent. In a state of ketosis, your body protects the breakdown of muscle and sacrifices the fat first. When the glucose-dependent athlete cuts weight, his body is not adapted. It's going to take a few days to start producing ketones if he hangs out in that low-calorie state. When a keto-adapted athlete cuts those calories, his body mechanics are ready for a state of recruiting the fat and using it as fuel. This is what every athlete wants if they're going to be at the top of that leaderboard. If you want another video on how athletes and muscles are analyzed in a ketogenic diet, check out this video.